Welcome back. We've been focusing on the prosecution of former President Jacob Zuma, but lots happening elsewhere. The non-governmental organization Equal Education has a legal axe to grind with the Department of Basic Education over the death of pupils on school premises due to poor infrastructure. They're calling it broken schools. Earlier this week, the organization went to court to force Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga to fix constitutional loopholes and gaps in the minimum norms and standards for school infrastructure. Joining us now from our Cape Town studio is the co-head of Equal Education in the Eastern Cape, Amanda Rinquest. Amanda, let's just look at the background. You pushed for this in 2013. The Department of Basic Education outlined what would change to make schools safe by 2016, and that didn't happen. Why?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Francis. The reason why this hasn't happened, or it's happened so slowly, is because we have said that there's a number of loopholes in the norms and standards which allow the minister to get out of our obligations. These include loopholes such as the escape clause, in which the minister says that the building of school infrastructure can only happen with the cooperation of other governmental departments and other state-owned entities. And so we believe that this is a clause that she's purposely put in there to help her avoid responsibility. So when there is no school with electricity, she can simply say, well, Eskom didn't come to the party. Or where there is no water and sanitation, she can say, well, the Department of Water and Sanitation didn't have funding or capacity to do this. And so we think that this is very important and one of the reasons for the delay, because it means that the buck doesn't stop with the Minister of Education.
It is a difficult argument because she is saying, you know, how can we electrify schools if Eskom doesn't come and do it? How can basic education be responsible for that?
Well, what we're primarily trying to say is that the minister is part of one entire government, and the Constitution requires cooperative governments. It is a constitutional requirement that departments work together in fulfillment of the Bill of Rights. And as we know that the Constitution specifically says that the right to education is an immediately realizable right. So that is a right without an internal limitation or progressively realizable, such as the right to housing. So when we say that the norms and standards are implemented, and we put guidelines and targets there, we already delaying an immediately realizable right. And then to further add delays or clauses that continue to prolong it is unconstitutional, especially when you're in one government. And she, as a representative of the executive, is able to herself coordinate amongst these departments how to get this done.
This was incredible to me. You can have, I mean, we know a 5-year-old died in a pit latrine just this week. So you can have 10 pit latrines, but then one bricked toilet, and that means you don't have to overhaul the school, basically.
Yes, this is a very, very important loophole in the norms and standards. So the minister uses the wording, schools that are entirely inappropriate will be prioritized. But what we know about communities is that often a school will be made of mud, wood, asbestos, zinc, and a community will get together, form a stokvel or something, and they will raise money together to build one brick structure. So essentially schools are being penalized, or communities are being penalized for trying to fix their school infrastructure, because where a school has one brick building or one admin block that's made of a proper structure, those schools don't get prioritized. So essentially, because she's looking at schools and not at structures, she ignores the kind of structure that we saw, that we know of at this Luna Primary School, that was clearly a structure that was dangerous, because she looks at schools in its entirety and not at structures. And like you said, it's a travesty that a young learner lost their life this week. It's the second learner that we know has fallen through a plain pit latrine toilet. And I must just say that there are 9,000 of these of schools that use plain pit latrine toilets. Sure. Because the minister looks at schools and not at dangerous structures.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. I think you went, especially in the Eastern Cape, and just looked at general conditions. So tell us, what is the state of our schools? The
state of our schools is one in which there are mud schools continue to exist. Schools made of zinc, schools made of wood, schools made of asbestos continue to exist, despite the norms and standards saying they should have been eradicated by 2016. We know that more than, like I said earlier on, 9,000 schools use pit latrine toilets. 5,000 of those schools, that is their only source of sanitation. So some schools have like mixed sanitation, but there are 5,000 schools that only have pit latrine toilets. In the Eastern Cape, a predominantly rural province, is 1,500 of those 5,000 schools. And many of these are primary schools where learners are unable to they don't have any they can't create alternatives for themselves, so they need to use the pit latrine. We've had harrowing stories of high school learners trying to break a fence so that they can go and use the bush. But primary school and young learners like Lumka couldn't go through a fence to go and use the toilet. She was 5 years old. And so the state of school infrastructure, the minister is aware of, is a crisis. The MEC in the Eastern Cape is aware is a crisis. And this is because our learner members have told them that this is what sanitation looks like, this is what our classrooms look like, and this is what conditions we are forced to do teaching and learning in.
So this is incredible when we consider that the lion's share of the budget goes to education. So presumably you don't think that the department can say there's not money to fix these schools. It's incredible.
So on the issue of budgets, the equal education is mindful that there's always a budgetary consideration, but this is not a sufficient excuse for why a learner drowned in a pit latrine toilet, and it's not a sufficient excuse for why these schools continue to exist. Because if we took budgets alone, right, then we could try and work from a financial perspective. But what we know about the Eastern Cape government is that there's a lack of planning, there's a lack of oversight, and there's definitely a lack of accountability. And all of those together, all of those factors together has resulted in the kind of tragedy we see today, and the kind of tragedy that we see at many different schools. Schools like Vukiletswete in Keiskammahoek, where learners, where just last week I got a message from a learner where a roof fell onto her school desk and just narrowly missed her.
Sure.
And these things do not just happen because of budgets. They happen because there is not enough oversight. There's not enough oversight over implementing agents, over contracts, over whether contracting companies who are contracted have enough capacity, and implementing agents are overseeing a number of projects when it's just, I think we were last told that there are 10. An implementing agent is a state-owned entity that's meant to oversee the building of school infrastructure. And we're told that about one is to 15 or 20. So one project manager is overseeing the building of 15 to 20 schools, which means those schools are being neglected because it's not possible for someone to oversee that many building of schools. And so if the department is not going to build capacity, then we're not going to see schools being built. And then we're going to continue to see this kind of disgusting stories of how learners are suffering.
Sure. So in finality, how long will your court challenge take over these regulations that you say are just giving the minister loopholes everywhere?
So the court case was heard in the Bishops High Court this week, Wednesday and Thursday. And the acting judge has said that she will have a judgment by May. So by May, we will know whether the minister will be required to fix those loopholes or not. But this is such an important issue that I think that as a movement, our members who are high school learners and who are living these conditions are willing to give us a mandate to take this all the way to whichever court we need to. We cannot have a situation where learners are learning under mud and zinc and asbestos and wood. Not in 2018 can this continue.
All right, thank you so much. That was Amanda Rinquest from Equal Education.